All right, good evening, everyone. Here we are live this evening for our second Black History Month discussion. I am Jamaica Miles, co-founder of All of Us, and I am happy to be able to introduce Sean Young, who will be the facilitator for tonight's conversation. So I will pass it off to Sean. Take it away. Oh, yeah, that's what I did.
Oh, there we go. All right, we're here. Welcome, everyone, to this. I think it's going to be a wonderful discussion with the brother here, Arthur Butler, Executive Director of the Human Rights Commission here in the city of Schenectady, County of Schenectady,
County.
County of Schenectady.
Yeah,
Excuse
county
me,
office.
County of Schenectady. We're in the county seat, which is the city of Schenectady. Um, Listen, I really appreciate everyone joining us once again here with our BHM series, Black History 365. I'm Sean Young, the co-founder of All of Us Community Action Group. We're going to talk about the human rights of Blackness. Right? We're going to have a discussion. We're going to watch a couple of videos. Fred Hampton and James Baldwin, two, oh man, gigantic, iconic figures in the history of this country, Black men who stood on the vanguard of liberation. So thank you all for joining us. We will get to a lot of questions. Author, I want to know the history of the author, like what brought him to the work that you do. I want to know the history of the Human Rights Commission, what the Human Rights Commission does, how is it a resource for our community, and we're going to have put all of this in conversation because it's history in action, right? Too often when we think about history, we think about history in the context of something that's old and stale and dead and no longer living, and people don't ever really recognize that we are walking in history and creating history every single day. Am I right?
No, exactly. I have a saying, right? My saying is, and you'll hear this, and if ever you start to listen when I speak, I say I'm always experiencing another blessed moment in an already blessed life. That's a reminder that what I'm doing is didn't just create it.
Yeah.
That it didn't just come easy. That it's on the blood, the sweat, the tears of those who came before me, those who are in the fight today, those who are coming behind me. It's always to empower, right? There's a story where it gives us advice that once you've been strengthened in an area, you're to reach back and strengthen somebody else. So you just don't hoard everything and think that it's only for me. What I do is not for me, it's for me and everybody else.
And that's an understanding to me of how connected we all are through today, through yesterday, and through our tomorrows, right? Understanding that linkage. Like right now, we're standing on the shoulders of so many others that came before us, doing this work and pushing for equal rights, pushing for equity, pushing for liberation, pushing for just the power balance to be more in balance,
Yeah.
with the masses of people. So this is going to be a wonderful discussion. And once again, and we're going to jump to the videos real quick. And Jamaica, when you ready to cue it up, we'll get to it. We'll watch some of these videos. Stay tuned. We're going to have a discussion afterwards. And I will make sure that I leave time for you all to answer questions. Remember, also put the questions in the chat.
Hampton became an organizer for the NAACP in the Chicago suburbs. He helped residents understand their rights in the face of brutality and gain access to social and educational resources.
Because if they don't have an education, then they're nowhere. You dig what I'm saying? They're nowhere because they don't even know why they're doing what they're doing.
The Black Panther Party, founded in Oakland by Bobby Seale and Huey P. Newton, had begun developing chapters around the country in 1968, just a few months after Martin Luther King was assassinated in Memphis. Following the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, King had turned toward a national movement, a poor people's campaign to unite the working class of all backgrounds in a push for better wages, healthcare access, housing, and more. Chicago was one of his prime organizing targets. It was the second largest city in the country and home to violent segregation. Hampton and the Black Panthers picked up the torch from King.
Now we say all power to all people. We say white power to white people. Brown power to brown people. Yellow power to yellow people. Black power to black people. X power to those that we left out. We say Panther power to the Vanguard Party.
A captivating speaker, he convinced Chicago gangs to form a non-aggression pact. He even reached out to Latino groups like the Young Lords to find common cause. And, shockingly, he found unity with a group of neo-Confederates.
What we have to do now is pull ourselves together into a functioning group of people who can go out and rebel against them.
The Young Patriots were basically the hillbilly version of the Black Panthers. When Hampton's family moved north during the Great Migration, thousands of poor whites were also flocking to northern cities for work. They didn't face the same racial discrimination as Black migrants, but they did confront extreme poverty and regional prejudice. They used the Confederate tool to recruit Southern expats, but then joined them in anti-racist mission with the Black Panthers and the Young Lords. Hampton brought together the Rainbow Coalition, uniting each of these groups in a campaign again to address poverty and housing, health access, corruption, and police brutality. Now,
are you still wearing?
So we're going to go ahead and switch to the next video at this point.
In American history books that Africa had no history, and neither did I. That I was a savage, about whom the less said the better, who had been saved by Europe and brought to America. And of course, I believed it. I didn't have much choice. Those are the only books there were. Everyone else seemed to agree. If you walk out of Harlem, ride out of Harlem downtown, the world agrees. What you see is much bigger, cleaner, whiter, richer, safer than where you are. They collect the garbage. People obviously can pay their life insurance. The children look happy, safe. You're not. And you go back home. And it would seem then, of course, that it's an act of God, that this is true, that you belong where white people have put you. It is only since the Second World War that there's been a counter-image in the world. And that image not come about through any legislation on the part of any American government, but through the fact that Africa was suddenly on the stage of the world, and Africans had to be dealt with in a way they'd never been dealt with before. This gave an American Negro for the first time a sense of himself beyond a savage or a clown. It has created, and will create, a great many conundrums. One of the great things that the white world does not know, but I think I do know, is that black people are just like everybody else. One has used the myth of Negro and the myth of color to pretend and to assume that you are dealing essentially with something exotic, bizarre, and practically, according to human laws, unknown. Alas, it is not true. We are also mercenaries, dictators, murderers, liars. We are human too. What is crucial here is that unless we can manage to establish some kind of dialogue between those people whom I pretend has paid for the American dream, and those other people who have not achieved it, we will be in terrible trouble. I want to say at the end, at the last, is that is what concerns me most. We are sitting in this room, and we are all, at least we like to think we are, relatively civilized, and we can talk to each other at least on certain levels, so that we could walk out of here assuming that the measure of our enlightenment, or at least our politeness, has some effect on the world. It may not. I remember, for example, when the ex-Attorney General, Mr. Robert Kennedy, said that it was conceivable that in 40 years in America we might have a Negro president. And that sounded like a very emancipated statement, I suppose, to white people. They were not in Harlem when this statement was first heard, and did not hear, and possibly will never hear, the laughter and the bitterness and the scorn with which the statement was greeted. From the point of view of the man in the Harlem barbershop, Bobby Kennedy only got here yesterday. And now he's already on his way to the presidency. We've been here for 400 years, and now he tells us that maybe in 40 years, if you're good, we may let you become president.
Listen, so listen. You know, so watching that video, especially, well, both videos for sure, but especially James Baldwin and that debate between himself and William F. Buckley, who was at the time one of the more prominent um, conservative leaders of that era, and listening to James Baldwin speak so powerfully, beautifully to the topic of was the American dream paid for by blacks in this country. Is something that when I first watched it some years ago, like I always revisit it. And I suggest that anyone that's watching this right now, you get a chance, please watch that entire video. It is something pretty amazing to see. So I want to jump into some questions just about some kind of like I want to have some conversation about what we just watched, and then get into more, like I said, about the history of you and the history of the Human Rights Commission and its mission here in Schenectady. But what are some takeaways from that video? What did you see? What stood out to you?
Right? What didn't? Oh my God, that, of course, right? What I got, my takeaway was about the passion.
Yeah.
Both individuals spoke with passion.
Yeah.
And out of passion. And passion is the thing that should drive us to do the things that we do. It's the thing that drives me to do the things that I do. And so to hear Baldwin say that, you know, basically we have a right, and that you're telling us that maybe if we're good, maybe if we dream, maybe if we pay attention, we might get somewhere, when we've already been somewhere. We were the architects of the White House. We were the builders of the White House. We were building and taking care and raising Southerners' children and instilling values in the very Southerners who grew up to hate us. So to be able to hear him talk with such passion, both, yeah, and Fred as well, to talk with such passion, him saying black power to the black people, brown power to the brown people. What I got from that was an inclusivity, that he was including everybody deserves to have power. You, I, we all deserve to have a share in the power, a share of the American dream.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. Some of the key points, you know, for me that stand out. You're right. They both spoke with a lot of passion, and this passion born out of a lot of pain and a lot of struggle and recognition, I think, of what it's taken to even get to this point, right? Some of the, how incredulous, Baldwin sounds when he's talking about, like, you're gonna tell us in 40 years, but we've been here this entire time, right? This idea, and then you have Fred talking at the same time about, well, both talking about humanity. That's where, to me, like black power to black people, brown power to brown people, white power to white people means is like we're all human and deserving of of a place here, in this world, and that our power shouldn't be obstructed, um, because of the myth of the Negro. We go back to James Baldwin, right? This myth of somehow being less than, this myth of somehow being, incapable, all right, or not deserving, or somehow not a part of, living outside of the human experience.
And that we're still fighting, right? We're still fighting
Yeah.
to be a part of the narrative, of the story, not something that is just interjected at people's whims, but we're as much part of the American experience, the American fabric. We are a part of it all, but yet we constantly are left out of the narrative. And so that,
Why is that?
well, come on, it's
So,
the-
I mean,
it's power, it's power, it's economics,
power.
it's power, and it's one of those things that if and I think this is what, and I heard this recently, it's what made Dr. King and people like the folks in the video that we just watched, that made them dangerous, because they started to talk about a poor person's movement. They started to talk about economics. They started to talk about having a share and what should be rightfully ours.
Yeah.
So that makes them dangerous,
Yeah.
because you can't, Europeans left the rule of kings and queens, so that because they felt that they were being left out of the power structure and left out of the dream, so they came here only to do the same thing.
Only to do the same thing to others, because, as my father Jamaican Miles always says, it's for too many people, it's not about ending, oppression. It's about getting your turn to be the oppressor.
Yeah.
Right? So not being oppressed yourself and having the opportunity to hold the whip, so to speak. And unfortunately, I've seen that play itself out in a number of different ways in doing movement work across the capital region, and actually not just the capital region, but the state and many other states, in this country, where you see people kind of vying for leadership, vying for to having a say so, and instead of not on merit so much as on just like stepping on the next person up, right? Like using that person to, like, yeah, you're telling the truth here, but you can't say it. I need to be the one to say it, right? And being criticized. So that's a little bit of an aside, but I wanna get into this idea of unity and humanity, right? Human Rights Commission, right? So I want to get into so tell me what it is in the context of your work with the Human Rights Commission. How are you addressing, the imbalances that you see? I mean, it wouldn't be a need for a Human Rights Commission if there wasn't violations of human rights, I imagine, right? So tell me, can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah. So, all right. And I don't think I'm anything different. So the work and how I operate within the parameters that have been given to me, is to bring that history. So to bring my upbringing, the youngest kid in a large family, learning to build coalitions, learning to work together, learning how to get your voice heard. Within a governmental structure that I'm in or governed under, I have to figure out how to coalesce. So what I do is I look at the things that we have in common, even if the other person doesn't want to see it, we still have something in common. My mom used to say, who's my greatest teacher, that if you cut me, I bleed. I'm human. I have emotions. I hurt. I have joy. Don't take away those human attributes or those human emotions away from me and make me into something non-human. Right. So what I do at the Human Rights is I make sure that um, that Black history is 365 days.
360 yeah.
That I am in a place where I can be heard and seen. Now that took work for me. I had to professionally take the information that was given to me through historical underpinnings, bring in what I was taught, all of the ethical things and the values and the core values that my mom gave me. And then as a professional, I had to get well, I'll say 24 karat gold coach, right? Somebody who was pure and that understood values. And so I had to get a professional coach to help me maneuver when I wanted to get in my emotions, which would have stopped the process. You know, if I get too much in my emotions, I might lose out on the opportunity. So I had to channel those things through a coach that helped me to have the information, put the information, think about what it was I was going to say. But still, that's what mom used to say. Know your rights. Just don't say you know your rights. Know your rights. Then how do you get those things across? So at the Human Rights Commission, that's what we've been doing. I shifted the work that we were doing. You know, it's no secret that to me, and it's to me, we were event oriented, but there were many events going on in the community that warranted our attention, our voice, our resources, and that's what I focused on. And then I called in my helpers to help me maintain strength and to help to encourage me when I'm not always feeling encouraged.
So what does that look like on day to day? So say Sean's got an issue or concern and something's going on and I feel like, you know, my rights about human rights have been violated in some way. And I know that this, you know, whether a person is incarcerated or someone's, you know, home, what does that look like for them just to be able to reach out, contact you all and get the assistance that they need?
Well, it's that same passion that both of our gentlemen that we're focusing on. It's having the passion, but it's also having the compassion to be able to listen. So even if someone comes to my office and they don't meet the criteria of an offense under a protected class, I still take time to listen to the whole story. I take time to listen to them and then utilize the resources that I have to connect them with somebody who can do something for them. But it's important that they be heard. It's important that people who come in that office who feel like they are not being heard or that they've been their rights have been violated or that they've been shut down or that they've been fired unfairly. It's important to have somebody sit long enough to listen. And so I had to hone and to rethink my listening skills.
And to that point, how I guess how important is it for the community to be active in being able in like reaching out to the commission and say, hey, this is what's going on, or just knowing their rights, for instance, or bringing someone to the table. And then I have a second part to the question is like, what partnerships do you have that you can point to in the city that actually helps bring some of that message, those messages to your office?
One thing I would say is you don't let someone else's opinion of someone dictate your relationship with them. And so I work with all of us and you and Jamaica and your volunteers. Even if someone say, oh, they're radical, that's not my experience. And you know what? Maybe I need in that partnership to have a radical piece to help keep us on the forefront, to help keep us thinking.
Okay, I just cut you off for a second. So when you just said we radical, there was just a bunch of fireworks just went up on our video. Like I don't know if Jamaica did that or somehow they.
It was not me. I saw the same thing. I don't know why it happened. I don't know, but
Yeah. It just like what? Like, okay, somebody listening. They radical and fireworks with all. Okay, sorry.
Oh, man.
Cut you off.
Look, you know, truth I heard this a long time ago. Truth will bring you to the doorstep of denial. And so when we speak truth, it will send some into alignment with the truth, and it will send others on the other side into denial. And the greater the truth, the greater the denial. And what we have happening when human rights are being violated is whether people agree there has been a wrong, and then they're open to the possibilities of righting the wrong, or they go to the other side and say, it's not my job, or it's not ours. That's not what happened. Or they bring up the history of the person or the history of the people. But to be in this position is to utilize my voice at the table, my knowledge that has been given to me, because those are all of the blessings that has been bestowed upon me, is to bring all of that to the forefront when I speak. And so listening to James Baldwin, and hearing how he was very deliberate in what it was that he was saying. And he could have said it many different ways.
Yeah, that's right.
But he was very deliberate to make sure that he painted the picture. He told the story, he painted the picture, he pulled you in, and then you had to, because now you were faced with the truth, you had to see what side of truth you wanted to be on. Are you one of the people who see me but deny that I'm in the same room? Are we on the same job and I'm overlooked, and I might be overqualified for that position? Am I overlooked because the truth says I am who I am? Dr. King's, some of their slogans were, I am a man. Why would they have to remind anyone that we're men?
Yeah. I mean, it's evident, and it would have been evident in the day-to-day social and political and economical interactions that we were having, right? We have to remind you of this because this is not being recognized, right? Our humanity is not being recognized. And I mean, I think that, it's really interesting, the mental gymnastics that we have to go through in order to articulate oftentimes our own humanity to people.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like that in and of itself, is a discussion.
Yeah.
Right? About when you think about all the different ways in which you have to find the deliberate pinpoint kind of descriptions of like why these things are wrong and why I should be recognized in this way, and because we're up against this avalanche oftentimes, right, of misinformation, narrative, like we talk about the myth of the Negro, about this somehow being like, when you not only is the messaging on all the media in Baldwin's day, but the reality of like living in the ghetto, living in poverty, and then leaving and going somewhere else, and then seeing all of this, what would I imagine would look like this glorious wealth. People having the things they need, clean roads, nice lawns, single family homes, the mailmen, the stuff that we would see. Like I can imagine, like when I was younger, watching TV and seeing, places that didn't look anything like where I lived, and like being represented in that way. And then people like us, not necessarily, except for the Cosby Show,
Right.
when I was younger, and maybe good times, but good times what that was in the projects.
Yeah.
Right. I just want to point to one thing, and I gotta let you. I want you to respond, but for the point about the ad hominem attack, like being like that happens in the debate. Oh, y'all didn't see that part of the debate, but William F. Buckley and after James Baldwin goes, and then he his first thing he says is something about the accent that James Baldwin is carrying on with, and how it's not necessarily authentic, right? And he can't answer the. So you said the truth, you fall on one side, either acceptance of the truth or denial. And after hearing James, James's arguments, his first thing he says is to talk about his accent, not talk about the actual argument that he made, that he laid out for everyone to see. Right. I just thought that was powerful when you talk about truth.
And it's still being done, right? So we watched just a few years ago in a debate, not to get politics in, but politics and everything. I'll try not to name anybody, but we watch in a debate, and when the one person finished speaking, the only thing that her opponent, I gave it away, right? The only thing that the opponent could say is, "Boy, you're a nasty woman."
Yeah.
How was telling you the truth about where we were at as a country, where we're about to go, creates in me something nasty or that's not palatable. So yeah, that was the right thing that he was going to do, right? Buckley was going to attack the person and use that to discredit. So we see this in human rights where um, if I'm dealing with a case and I'm talking about someone who may have filed an incident report based on a racial slur. And because they file an incident report, they get terminated. I say it's retaliation. They say, well, they weren't a good employee. Were they not a good employee before the incident report? Or are they now not a good employee? Am I not, are you not going to address the points that I just made? Or are you just going to launch an attack at me? That's where the professional or the mentorship comes in, right? To have people like us who are in a position to mentor those coming behind us and even those who are where we're at, so that when we speak in a very deliberate, coordinated effort. So that's where that comes, so that I don't get caught up in the emotions and start arguing about the attack, but just stay on point, stay on messaging.
You know, I think let me get to this very next question, and I want to talk about the barriers, the ongoing challenges that Black folks face, we're still facing, right? We faced and are still facing. There's definitely some accomplishments. I hate when people say, "Well, nothing has ever changed." I'm like, yeah, I mean, I think it ignores much of the efforts, the lives lost, that has happened in history to actually move the needle, which should have never had to happen. We should have never had to go through all of this to move the needle, but those things happened and people lost their lives, right? Fighting to address the balance, right? What is it, in your estimation, when you look at the things that we're facing, the obstacles in our way, what are some solutions? Like, what are some things as a community we could be doing to take some strides forward?
Yeah. So in all of the trainings that I do, in my business life, I learned how to do what's called SWOT, SWOT, to look at the strengths, look at the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats. And so in the work that I do, whether it's in a training, I'm always evaluating where the strengths are, where the weaknesses are. What are my opportunities? What are our opportunities? So I think, and what are the threats? And I think that if I was to do a quick analysis on what you were just on the question, we sometimes get in our own way. We don't take the opportunity. Professor Bell, Derek Bell, I remember working at a non-for-profit, and I bought a used car, and the used car was a Mercedes. And
It's a nice used car.
yeah, it was a used car, right? And Professor Bell said to me when he saw it, he says, "Oh, very nice car." He said, "Very nice." He said, "I'm wondering how the people you serve view the car and how that connects you to them or how that takes you away from them."
Interesting.
Yeah. And so those are role models who put everything on the line. So one of the things we have to do to move the needle forward is to make sure that I'm willing to put on the line my comfort. So in order to become comfortable, I'm going to have to face some discomfort.
Yeah.
So I put that on the line. We have to realize what our strengths are, and our strengths, my strengths, come from a powerhouse, jam-packed room full of women.
Mm-hmm.
My mother, my godmother, my coach, friends, who I got to see in action, how to face adversity, how to create something out of nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And to make it look pretty, even when it was at its ugliest, how to make it look pretty for us to continue to do it and then to keep on doing it. So, I think that moving the needle forward is to get out of our own way, put our comfort on the line, and utilize our resources to move us forward. And if I say us, that means I'm including myself.
Yeah.
Not I'm just going to get this for myself and I'm going to be comfortable and I'm going to live this kind of life and y'all have to do for yourself. No.
Yeah. So I just to respond to what you said, when I think about getting out of our own way, I think less about the external issues external to me and more about what's going on in my own head in my own life. But I got to tell you, I work with people on a daily basis. Like I work with people on a daily basis, people returning home from incarceration, other community members, and the effort. So I guess the question can be posed this way, through this statement, where people sometimes don't even know the questions to ask. And their eyes are open, but they don't see the way forward. Right. So like, what is it? So for those of us that have maybe got a peek out, we got a little peek and we can see a little bit and we're hearing a little bit and we can, and when you know better, you can do better.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But if you don't even know that there is necessarily better for you, because once again, going back to the myth of the Negro, you're surrounded by an entire community of people. Well, I won't say the entire community, but I would say many people in the community, that are messaging you, this is where you're capped at.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is how far you can go. This is what's acceptable. This is what, they'll let you do, so to speak.
Yeah. So we get together and we talk to each other. That's the solution, is to have the conversations and to create the create a place of safety and comfort by having the conversations.
Yeah.
So I listen to the community. James Baldwin was in tune with the community.
That's right.
Dr. King was in tune with the community.
Mm-hmm.
Our brother Fred, he was in tune with the community.
Mm-hmm.
Malcolm was in tune with the community. Rosa Parks in tune with the community. Anybody who has championed a great movement, they did so on behalf of the community because they knew and heard and saw themselves as part of the community that was not benefiting from the very things that was said, that all men, all people are created equal. And now if that you wrote it on the paper, you certainly must live up to it. So we have to take people to task. And the more that we take folks to task, unified, whether that's through voting, and I think through voting, which is why voter suppression is such a big issue and why we're still fighting for voter rights and those kinds of things. Years 40, 50, 60 years after the Voting Rights Act was signed into law, that we're still fighting it. And we're still fighting this because they know if we ever get our hands on the power of the vote. So when people say to me, why should I vote? It doesn't matter. Oh, it matters.
That's right.
It matters because somebody was killed trying to vote so that I could have a right to vote.
That's right.
And that were Black folks, white folks were killed, on those buses, on those trips to the South to make sure that we all had a right to vote. So it's important. what we have to see that is once we vote and the outcome says we all voted, and look what we took out of power, that evil. We took away the power from those who wanted to block us. And it happened because you were a part of. Now we can celebrate.
I think, for me, I don't disagree with anything you said too much, except for I would put the political education ahead of the voting. You have to be, like Fred Hampton talked about the power of education, the importance of education. Like, we have to be more politically aware as a community when it comes to voting, when it comes to just the electoral process, when it comes to the government process. I don't know how many people, not black, white, whoever, indifferent, even understands the entire process and responsibility of the government, right? The people that are supposed to be servants of the people.
Right.
That's what they're supposed to be.
So that's why they don't teach civics.
That's why they don't teach civics anymore. That's right. Or at least they don't teach them in many of the public schools.
Some of the private, there are certain people who doesn't even understand the branches of government. You remember that, remember that silly cartoon? I don't know if I'm the only one that remembers it. Yeah. Yes.
Anybody old as me, like old as us, that don't remember I'm a Bill, like
Look it up.
Yeah,
right. It had a nice little song to it and everything, But yeah, it's gotta be talked about. But you know what?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be one of those people who say, "Oh, life was simpler when I was growing up. We didn't have some of the distractions."
Yeah.
But what we really have to do is make time. Now we started making date time and all these other times. We got to make time just to have conversations. For us, it was around the dinner table on Sunday where we talked about everything. We learned about everything, and we learned about each other through conversations. And so, as a person I am, I still love to bring people into my home and feed them and have conversations, and I put some rules in there. Find out what we have alike. That's the one prerequisite to come into my home. You must focus on finding out something that you can walk away and say, "Oh, I met somebody different. I met somebody with a different political thought." But you know what? Even though we might think differently in one area, we have this in common.
Yeah.
Now we can build on the things that we have in common.
I like the idea of having those collective moments, like bringing people together intentionally and to network amongst each other, not just for some profit, like economic profit per se, but just getting to know who's in your community. One thing that me and Jamaica do a lot of, and we're waiting for the weather to break a bit more for us to be back out, walking in the community, just talking to people, right? Asking people what's going on, like what are your concerns, what are your issues, what are you thinking about, having our community speak out, right? Where we break bread with the community, we have a conversation, and we listen to what is going on. I think that there's not been enough of that happening. There's still not enough, even though me and Jamaica are doing it, and many of our campaign associates, including now Sophia, our new intern. Shout out to Sophia. There's not enough of the consistent engagement. So on the one hand, we've been taught to be consumers, right? And it's to go after the individual prize and to not necessarily think about everyone else. And that creates this atomization, right? In the community where now we're not a community of a really community, we're a community of individuals,
right?
Where no one wants to talk to this one, and people are, and I want to be careful too, right? With how I'm talking about this, because this ain't all Black communities.
No.
Right? No. All Black communities aren't what is highlighted often as the Black community for all the Black community across the country, right? I remember visiting Woodbridge, Virginia one time, my first time in Virginia when I was very young. I was very young down there. My cousins are from, some of my cousins are from Virginia, and I looked at the neighborhood I was in, and I was like, whoa, like it looked like this Una, and it was all Black folks lived there, right? And that was the first inkling that there was something outside of it, because previous to that I had been like in Brooklyn and then in Left, Right, in Queens, and then Harlem, and and then obviously Albany and Schenectady, and some of the poorest communities. They had the office. So just being careful about, what is the Black community, right?
Yeah.
Is it just the ghettos that we always see, or is it there's more going on than that?
It's all of us, and you named it, right? Because if I go up, we all go up.
Yeah.
If one of us are hurting, we all should be hurting, right? We all hurt. And so that's that care, that's that compassion, that's bringing that into the table to know that we're all, that the interconnections of all of the community, the middle class, the poor, the folks who live in way below the poverty, we're still all interconnected. We all are connected to each other, and our success is based on all of our success. We all get to succeed. And we do that. I think another solution is really not just at election time, but inviting the people who are in office. And when we look at Schenectady and we see that sometimes the difference in a race is maybe a few hundred votes, but when you look at the numbers in the county and see that only 3,000 votes, people came out to vote, it's pretty disturbing.
Yeah.
What do we do to get the enthusiasm up so that people start to vote and understand that? How do we get the people who are in office, who will make the laws or make the decisions that impact their lives, to come and talk to us, not just at election time, but come into the community and have those listening tours.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then ask them afterwards, can we follow up to see what your takeaways were? And then what do you see as an opportunity? Because otherwise, we're going to become a threat to your reelection by voting against you.
And the thing is, they have to believe that, right? Like we've definitely seen some changes in the city of Schenectady, as far as representation is concerned. The most people of color, and in the city council ever, right? In the last few years, very happy to have seen that. And they've had like little town hall discussions, and I remember there was a couple things that they've done to be a part of the community. I see them at different events, but getting to the community and getting them activated, getting them enthusiastic about voting, brings me back to education, understanding. Education, I mean, not in the sense of like a formal education, but being knowledgeable about, how that office, how how government works.
Right.
How are the roles getting paid? How does it impact me? Right? There's I can't remember the name, I can't remember the title of the book right now, but there's a book that I was reading not so long ago that talks about bringing what's far near, right? So what in people's minds, they like, even I can speak for myself as a young person, local government seemed very far away, right? It didn't seem like something that was in my reality in the day to day, right? Police were more of a reality. The school was a reality, but not local government, the mayor's office, city council people, county legislature, etc. Right? I had no idea what those processes were because no one in my family had any idea what those processes were, and then also no one in the school district was teaching that at the time, right? As a core thing you should know, and I think that says a lot, right? That we're not like we're in this quote unquote democracy, republic that is a part of democracy that doesn't teach by and large its people what the democratic process is about, what the government process is actually about, until much, much later in life, as opposed to in early years where it can stick and stay and it becomes like this muscle memory. So education to me is key to bringing that enthusiasm, and then consistency. Because remember, we're not walking up talking to blank slates. There's an entire history of neglect and being left out and ignored that exists. And people say that, right?
Yeah.
And that's something you have to contend with.
Yeah. So, but we can't let that have us become stuck either in that excuse or in that reality. In that truth, once we hear the truth also about what has kept us in a certain place, don't go into denial. See it as the truth, and then ask, what's my opportunity to get out of this, or to move us out of this, or to move something that is going to make it so that it's more inclusive? What am I going to do? What are we going to do? And we have to ask the questions. What are we going to do? I can't do it alone. You, Jamaica, y'all can't do it alone. So we have to partnership so that we have these kinds of conversations. And we have to talk to those who are elected and make sure that they're talking to us. It can't be one politician, won't name names, I'm not doing any pitches, but this person is everywhere at everybody's event, you know. I've never seen, I'm like, do you ever see, and back and forth to Washington. But at every small event, every big event, right there. And so we got to get that spirit so that we're everywhere. Part of the success in the work that I do is that I try to be as many places as I can be. And other things suffer in that, where but I have to remember to take care of self also, while I'm doing all of those things too.
I just want to remind folks that as this conversation goes on, that, you know, you are putting, you know, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. Jamaica will, it looks like we have some things in the chat, which is great. So if you have more questions, please put them in the chat. We're going to get to those questions shortly. We're just going to continue this discussion, which is really, really, we got to do more of this.
Yeah.
We got to do more of this. This is a lot of fun, just sitting and having and some of these conversations about our community, and then what the solutions are to the problems that we face, man. I certainly appreciate you taking the time out to come have this discussion with us, man. It's really fly. And we're gonna start naming names. That's
my neutrality, right? It's not I'm afraid. I was like, you know what?
We gonna start naming names. I can name names.
Okay.
I think I can name names. I gotta ask Jamaica.
She does have the power.
She might put me on mute, so I name a name.
Yeah.
No, this is really a great conversation, and I'm looking forward for more. So we've discussed Fred Hampton, we discussed James Baldwin. Please, if you haven't watched those entire videos, you know, take the time, watch that debate between James Baldwin and William F. Buckley. Extremely proud of that Black man in that space. He was at Oxford University, in the UK, putting on, you know, for the history of the people, and I think so many other videos he has, which are great. And then Fred Hampton and what he was able to do. Like, he was murdered at 21.
Yeah.
You know, when you see the impact that the brother had in his community in such a short time span, in such a young age, right? So when I talk to young people, I always point to the youth of leadership, right? Of the leadership. You know, Martin got his first, I think Martin got his first church like 24.
He was really young.
He was young. He was like 24 years old. Malcolm was a little bit older. Medgar Evers was really young. All the Asad Shakur was really, all of them were very, very young in the movement. Many of them had come out of college, some but just young and passionate, as you spoke to earlier. And for what they were seeing as what was wrong with their community and the changes that were absolutely needed. So I would just suggest that everyone take their time to just review some of those videos and then put it in the context of your own life. Like, what can you do more of in your own personal life to address the things that you see wrong in your community, and work collectively. Organizing 101. You got a problem, like, identify the problem, right? Identify the problem, try to identify the solution. But if you're trying to push like government and organize, you start talking to there's people in your circle that might have that same problem.
Yeah.
People in the same block that might have that same problem. You have those conversations, and then collectively, your efforts could pull off miracles. I won't even call it a miracle. Could pull off the change.
Get the job done,
right? And get the job done. I won't call it a miracle. Just putting it in the divine way. We don't necessarily have to we can do these things. Not saying without God. I feel like I'm gonna get in trouble with Jamaica again. Sorry, Jamaica. I'm saying we can do these things, right? We don't have to just go to prayer. Like that's what I'm trying to say. I think I got it out. We don't have to just go to prayer. We can go to each other.
We can go to Pharaoh, right? If you want to go, if you want to get the biblical in there, right? We can go to Pharaoh and ask, make our requests known.
And make our demands known, I would say. Because ultimately, I would say demands in the sense that if we're asking for what is right and exact, if we're asking for what the community is a demonstrated need in the community, then we're making the demand as servants of the community that you do this. Because remember, we all pay into those taxes. Right. We all pay, that money don't come out of thin air, right? We all have to pay into that, and collectively it's for the benefit of the collective good. Mm-hmm. So we have a right to it. When you see investments not happening in one community versus another community, and you're going to like, hey, we, the squeaky wheels get the grease, so to speak, right? And we can make changes like that. So if Jamaica, do we have any questions? I see 24 things in the chat. Any questions for Mr. Arthur Butler or myself about some of the context of this conversation? This has been a great discussion so far.
It has been a great discussion. Lots of folks giving accolades to y'all, like really appreciating the topic, the dialogue, all of the words. One in particular, someone mentioned, it wasn't necessarily a question, but I think it's worth repeating so that other folks can hear it, that this is a multifaceted problem that needs to be addressed, starting with internal healing as a race/community. What do we do with the Tim Scott in our community? They have always existed.
Ooh, what do we do with the Tim Scotts in our community? They have always existed.
Yeah, so as it comes to the interpersonal and how to heal as a race and those, how do we do it? The analogy I would give is that of a spider. And how no matter where a spider can set up a home anywhere. And you can come in and knock that spider down, and you come back the next a couple hours and the web is respun. And so my suggestion then is, or the thing I love about the spider is that even, and this is so interesting, right? If you stand and watch the spider that you just knocked away and destroyed his resting place, or the place where he gets nourishment, or that the spider gets nourishment, let me not give it a gender. What I find interesting about the spider is that in free fall, the spider still continues to produce. It's still casting a web that keeps it attached to something. So even when we're as a race have been knocked down or in free fall, we still have to learn how to produce and stay connected to something, so that when you thought that you had knocked us down, knocked us out, right? Here we come again. And that's the resiliency, right? That's the resilience of our people, is that throughout history, we continue to get back up. We continue to stay connected. And we have to look at then how to strengthen those connections and to put folks in places where we can do the best or the greater good for all of us. And so I think what we do is that we stay connected, we keep getting back up, we lean on each other for encouragement, we lean on each other for support, we lean on each other. If you're hungry and I have 2 slices of bread, let me give you one, because I'm giving you, I'm saying that I am invested in you and then your well-being. So I think that's my thing is, it might be a little pie in the sky type of thing, but stay connected, keep producing.
That's the one, the spider. I was like, what? Where are we going with the spider? But you connected all of that, and like I see it now. keep producing, stay connected, even when you're knocked down. That is a way forward. And I would say we do that. We've done that naturally. Like I think that some of the image in people's minds of even ourselves, Black people ourselves, of what Black people are, have been narrated by other people for too long, for far too long. So the history of degradation and pain and suffering and always having to overcome and getting knocked down and having to stay connected is true, right? But it ain't the only history we got. We've got some magnificent successes, right, amongst our community, some magnificent triumphs, some great leaders. But the imbalance, I think, in how we think about it too often, and not to say that we don't, there's an imbalance of power, but the imbalance in the storytelling about only talking about certain aspects of our community and not highlighting enough in spots. We'll highlight certain stuff in spots. And it makes it seem like the disparity is so much more greater than what it is. We have a lot to be proud of, as a community, right? And to the Tim Scott, to the Tim Scott, to the Tim Scotts of the world, right? It's very profitable to be Black and put down Black people. It's very popular to be Black and stand in the dominant power structure saying you all are crying foul for no reason and you should do this or that thing and you'll be perfectly fine because look, I did it, right? It's a very profitable kind of messaging that will ignore much of the environments that exist that make those potentialities less likely than so. Maybe not impossible, but when you're talking about the ratio of outcomes, right? When you're just saying, you wouldn't put it in that sense. We're just talking about outcomes. My outcomes of financial outcomes, health outcomes, all the data is there. In certain communities, it's one thing. In certain communities, it's another thing. Whether they're Black, white, or indifferent, when you're talking about wealth, right?
Right.
And it's important that we gotta yes, do the work on yourself, but also recognize the changes that are needed more on a structural, systemic level in order to address that ratio that I'm speaking to.
See, that's why I love talking, right? Because you get to it, and I'm gonna make it flourish. So, but despite it, right? Because we know that not even reciprocity, there will come a moment when even in all that achievement and work on yourself, you are going to get a reminder of where you are and what your place is. And if you're not connected, if you didn't continue to produce, then you're like Omarosa, who was so set apart because she was operating in the White House.
Yeah.
But when they got ready to deal with Sister, they dragged her out.
Yeah.
And then she wasn't connected, so she had no one to fight for her. The Clarence Thomases of the world. We forget sometimes that had it not been for those things called quotas and those things that got us into college.
Yeah.
Even though I had good SAT scores, even though my guidance counselor didn't talk to me about a university, didn't talk to me about a promise. They were trying to talk about a trade. Right? So, but if it had not been for the equal opportunity and those other opportunity programs that allowed kids like me to get into universities that normally would have overlooked us. And then I have to remind when I tell the story that I'm doing what I'm doing now, not be protected and say, oh, I did this on my own. No, it was an EOC program and a transitional year program, EOC and TYP, that got little old me in the university so that I could then, so I'm going to tell the whole story. It was the mother who made sure that if your family didn't have, made sure that we took some of what we had and shared it with you. There were many times in Christmas when the tree was overflowing with gift for a single mom, because my dad died when I was 4, who's kept us in the same lifestyle. But what she did was if you did not have and you came to our house on Christmas Day, my mother would pull us aside and say, go to the tree and get a gift and give that. And then when I was coming up, we had all those electric Rock'em Sock'em. We had the electric football sets and the hockey game set.
Yeah.
You couldn't pick your worst gift. Mom said, pick your best, the one she knew you were most connected to, right? And give it to them.
Wow.
And don't do it begrudgingly.
Yeah. Wow.
Give it to them, right? Because we understood, if I go up, you go up.
Yeah.
And now you just changed what would have been a sad story up for that child into a happy story. Right.
And you also create, in the other child that's giving away the gift, is the collective thing. There's the importance of, like, you know what I mean? I'm not above this person. The importance of giving, the importance of caring,
Mm-hmm.
right? And having empathy for someone, and knowing when you have things, and it's okay to share that thing to make sure someone else. That's a really wonderful story, and I think it points to the fact that when we're talking about the collective work and we're talking about coming together in this very large sense, it's not just large. It's not just, you know, all Black people in the country got to come. No, like, we can do this in our own, on our own block, on our own street, in our own, in the workforce, in our own family.
Yeah.
Right? Do the work on yourself, of course. Do the work that's needed, but, like, you know, be that example, right? I try to be that example more today than I ever done in my life, to be the example of what it means to think collectively, like to think in a sense, like, I want to go rise up with everyone, not just on my own. I want to see better for other people, not just myself. And there's a lot of hurdles I had to go through in my own personal life in order to get to a place where I was just so passionate, right, about what I was doing and how I was giving back, and just being intentional about that, because I didn't understand the responsibility of community at one point in my life. And I came, like, wait a minute, as a person living in the community, wherever I'm at, I have a responsibility to that community.
Yeah.
Right? What I do here impacts that community. What I do not do here can impact that community.
Yeah.
Not stepping up, not being involved.
It's the little things, right?
Yeah.
It's all of the big things and the little things.
Yeah.
Me mowing my lawn encourages the next person to mow their lawn. Me picking up in front of my house, we used to go out and sweep out in front of our house.
Yeah.
Used to sweep out in front of, on the sidewalk and on the street.
Yeah.
If I do it and you do it and they do it and they do it, now our block is beautiful. We don't have to wait on the city to come and do it.
Somebody else.
Right.
Yeah, you're right.
We get a chance to have it because, you know, what I do is, there's a selfish part of it. It's for me.
Yeah.
But it's also, it creates an example.
Yeah.
Because now I'm looking at what's coming behind me and what's my legacy.
Yeah.
You know, what's that going to look like?
And you see in real time what your impact could be. Listen, this is a great conversation. We could just keep going. Jamaica, I know there's another question in the chat. Before we get to that, I just want to speak to the affirmative action piece, whether it's affirmative action getting into college or the affirmative action as far as in the workplace. And there was a brother, and I'm get better at remembering names, but this brother spoke so brilliantly to this. He says that I was an affirmative action hire. That's not a slander against me, though. Me being an affirmative action hire says more about you than it does about me. The very fact that affirmative action was needed in the first place, right? If it was because you wouldn't hire us. You wouldn't hire me. You wouldn't put me in these positions.
Exactly.
We wouldn't have any representation here. So it says more about, you know, the business or the people running the business that these requirements were needed, is not about the candidate who successfully landed a position because of it.
Right. And we tell the story. Get us out of here, Jamaica, because but you know, we tell the story, right? Because had there not been a Thurgood Marshall, I hate to say this, but there wouldn't have been a Clarence Thomas.
That's right.
Now, what he did and what he's doing doesn't pay any kind of homage to the work that Thurgood Marshall. Because when you look at an example like a Clarence Thomas, you get somebody who thinks that I did this myself and I did this by merit. Had there not been a Thurgood Marshall, you, brother, would not be on that. You're not like our sister that was just put on there, who is forward thinking and brings that experience and that voice and challenges based on the people, the need, and the fairness and equality. Not a man who acts like I ride with billionaires.
I feel like, you know what? All right, we're gonna get to the question. I just want to say
Uh-huh.
something.
Uh-huh.
I
Yep.
feel
I'm just
like
gonna jump in. I'm gonna jump in. Y'all are killing me today.
wait.
I
It's just
appreciate y'all.
one
This is
thing.
one of those moments. I know how it goes. The thumbs down because y'all want to keep talking. Um,
Get a thumbs down.
yeah, this is what happens because they're great conversations and they just keep going and going. But we're going to be mindful of people's time. And I want to make sure that you both get an opportunity to have your closing thoughts. We've got one more question, and it really builds off of what you all have been talking about already, the humanity of Blackness. And how do we, and you've both touched on this. So if you just want to elaborate some more, when we're talking about the humanity of Blackness, how do we begin to love on ourselves and on one another through our traumatic experiences in the United States of America, to continue that momentum, and to also find those moments of unity that y'all talked about with Baldwin and with the Black Panther Party. But because of the trauma and because of the intentionality of white supremacy, our humanity has always been challenged. And it is a struggle for Black folks as well to love ourselves and love each other. So, how do we continue and look for that love for ourselves and for each other, our own humanity?
I'm looking at the author.
We remember. I remember. I remember. I remember the stories. I may paint a picture based on the pastels, the beauty of what I learned through those who taught me. But I also know about the dark sides, the ugly sides, and I make that it's all part of the story. Um, and it's a reminder for me not to turn around. Watching people get spit on. Sean talked about being in the South as a young kid, going to the South as a young kid, and living under the threat of looking at people or pointing your finger at people. And if you didn't answer folks right, what could have happened? Um, Remembering the people who were hosed with fire hoses and had dogs sicked on them, and they kept they kept on going. And so healing to me is about embracing the journey that I have been placed here to um, bear witness to, and then encourage through my experience that it's not always going to be easy, right? Here's my grandmama talking now, right? But I really don't believe that I was brought to this place to be left here alone. And so I have to encourage myself to continue um, to get up when I get knocked down, to produce and to take a no and make it into a yes, and present the case and know my rights and all those things that mom taught me. Um, and then to get help on how to articulate that in other circles so that I'm effective in every room that I walk into. Lastly, I'll just say that, my favorite orator was Barbara Jordan. I loved when Barbara Jordan would speak. And I listened to old tapes of her at the Democratic Convention and other speeches that she gave. I go and I listen to those speeches and I hear the passion and I can relate to the passion. I also can relate to the hurt that created the words, but they also had a vision for a better place. And I have a vision for a better place, a better world, a better me.
I'll, yeah, that's a very interesting question, and there's some simple ways to answer it. Maybe I think I love your response to it. I think as we're talking, I'm thinking through like what my response would be. I think that I think it's important, to love yourself, right? To get to that place of loving yourself and loving your community. I think you got to recognize that you've been lied to. Like we've been lied to for a very long time and still lied to this day. You go through I don't know, Netflix, Prime Video, whatever thing you have, an app for media, for some entertainment, and you see who the characters are, who the characters are not. On a large, you see who the heroes are, right? You see the people where the importance is laid. I can remember, and I won't make this very long because it's something I actually have to still think through myself, to be honest with you. But I can remember as being a very young person and how much I loved like G.I. Joe, right? And how much I loved the heroes that were presented to me in such a shining way, right? Um, and what would it be if we thought of our people in that same shining light? If we were told to say the stories of Medgar Evers, of Octavius Cato, of Robert Smalls, of so many different people in history, like what feeling would you have? What understanding would you have of yourself? I think James Baldwin says something about you can never, you cannot, or you get your sense of yourself and your sense of identity to your sense of your own history, right? So your sense of self, sense of identity comes from a sense of your own history and what you know about your history. So if we've been told in these different tones about how undervalued we've been and how abused we've been and how out of sorts or treated poorly we've been over all these years, and never highlighting the successes, the heroes, the champions, the people that stand out that we can connect to in our ancestry beyond just American history, even. Because I mean, you watch many of, what do you think? Why I get these analogies all mixed up when I start thinking about Merlin and the Round Table, like whatever it's called, right? Like when you see those type of stories told, right? Like where are those stories from, the places where people look like us? So so storytelling, so like recognizing that you've been lied to directly and by omission, right? And understanding and getting passionate about, and then asking the question like, why have I been lied to? And then doing that work and then finding that history and finding that love and passion for who you are. We've done it in different instances and times in this country. And it's something that has to be revisited. These stories can't just be told once upon a time. They got to be told time and time again. They got to be told. The elders got to teach the younger ones, the history that they've been through. They got to pass it on. Yeah. But what happens when the elders don't even know the stories? So those are my thoughts. I know we're probably at a bit of, we're getting close to time. We got a couple of minutes left. This has been a really good conversation, man. Really? I really do appreciate you being here today, man, and talking with us. Why don't you could you maybe point out how can people get in touch with the Human Rights Commission? And maybe what issues, generally speaking, you all cover before we sign off. Is that okay, Jamaica? You holding all the power.
I haven't muted you yet.
All right, thank you.
So you can go on the Schenectady County website, and under the departments, it will say Human Rights Commission. And in that, it really gives what our mission, our vision, what we do, but we do more than that. So that do not just not reach out to us because it says you're not part of that. Your rights have not been violated based on those protective class. What I said earlier is that you still have someone who's committed to hearing your story, hearing whatever it is you bring, and then as a conductor is to be able to help to point you in a direction where you can get help and to lend, if I have a name, to lend my name to the place that you might need to get to by adding that to you and your story so that then it creates it increases the number that's bringing the story or the incident or the violation. It's just not you by yourself facing your Goliath. It's you and one other or 10 others that's going to come along. There's many times we tell the story and get additional support. So go to the www Schenectady County ny.gov, and it'll take you to the county website, and you'll find the Human Rights Commission, and that's where you'll find me at, and you'll see me in the community.
And folks incarcerated can also reach out to you all. There's a way for them to write in and or somehow communicate with the Human Rights Commission.
Yeah, we have online forms also that are on the site, and if they go and they fill that online, it's going to generate a report and it's going to be sent to me. So people who are incarcerated can submit that those requests to us. They can get our address. Letters will come to me. I think that there might be some sort of mechanisms in place where you're able to make a call to the Human Rights Commission as you would to other entities, and so yeah, we're accessible.
Awesome. Well, I guess I just want to say thank you.
Thank you,
brother. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamaica.
Yeah, great conversation, great discussion. Appreciate everyone that tuned in. Once again, we'll be back having another conversation next week where Jamaica Miles will be speaking with our good friend, director of the Working Families Party, co-director of the Working Families Party, Jasmine Gripper. So tune in for that. Please register, sign up, have those questions. It'll be another great discussion to be had. And thank you all for tuning in. Much appreciated.
Thank you.